Welcome to Tell Me a Story. My name's Adina Samuels, and I'm inviting anyone and everyone to share their stories with me. Let's see what we get. Adam, welcome to Tell Me a Story. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
I'm excited to have you. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hello, listeners. I'm Adam. I grew up in the States, moved to Toronto when I was 14, studied biomedical engineering in school, worked for a cannabis company for a little while, work now for a fintech doing strategy and analytics. I spent the past couple of years kind of traveling around a little bit, trying all kinds of new hobbies, indoor hobbies, outdoor hobbies. Depends really on where I am, but one thing's for certain is that wherever I go, I love creating kind of a sense of family in the community that I make.
What's one of your indoor, outdoor hobbies right now?
An outdoor hobby that I love so much is outdoor rock climbing. In the winter in Toronto, there's not so much of that. So
Right.
My indoor hobby right now, my big one, is doing improv comedy.
Amazing. I love it. I've been to one of your shows, and it was funny.
Thank you.
So, Adam, as the story goes, on this show, I bring people on to tell me a story. So let's hear yours.
Yeah, okay. I had to actually think quite hard on what kind of story I would be sharing with you.
It is hard, yeah.
It could be literally anything.
Could be literally anything.
I have a story for you. A couple years ago, I was doing some traveling. I had just led a birthright trip and was spending some time in Israel afterwards. And I was staying with a friend of mine on his couch, as it kind of goes, and when you do that. And I was going to a food festival there, reconnecting with an old friend of mine who had moved there after living in New York for a couple of years and whatever. He had gone from frat boy to like pseudo modern Orthodox guy. So it was really funny to watch his journey. And so we met up at this food festival, and through him I met this guy named Jonathan. A guy from New York, was just visiting at the time, really a larger than life character.
How so?
In honestly every way. Like big guy, big personality, deep booming voice, like huge beard, just a hilarious guy, had like no fear, could talk to anyone, could do anything. He's one of those guys that just like, if you will it, it'll happen kind of thing. Like if you think your way into it, it'll happen. Anyway, Jonathan meets me. I guess we get on. He says, if ever you're in New York, come by and I'll have you over for a dinner. It's like an easy offer to make, thinking that it'll probably never happen. Yeah. But I love taking people up on those opportunities. So I visited New York. I visited New York a handful of times after that trip. But on one of them, I reached out to him. He said, yeah, come by for a Friday night dinner. There's going to be a bunch of people hanging out. Come meet them. It was like a Halloween dinner, which was kind of a funny cross-section of like a Jewish traditional dinner combined with a Halloween theme of sorts. And at this dinner, I met all kinds of characters. But one of the guys I was talking to about rock climbing.
Okay.
I was like, oh, I rock climb, blah, blah, blah. And I told him that I do this stuff and showed him some photos of some rock climbs that I've done.
Isn't that like a very, like, don't you feel really cool when you tell people you rock climb? Like, it's one of those things.
It's not about being cool. It does feel like a cool hobby, but not because I do it to be cool. I think it's just like a cool thing because I didn't even know it was a hobby or a thing that you could do until I was exposed to it by friends.
I think I would do it just to be able to tell people that I rock
right, for a photo. Right. That's a good brand.
Just lend me your gear one time. We'll just like...
Safe.
Yeah.
I do recognize that it's kind of an insane sport. Like, you're bolting yourself to the side of a mountain suspended by a rope and hoping for the best. You kind of have to trust a certain system. But we were talking about it. The photo that I had shown him was of me climbing in Squamish. There's this amazing climb over a river. It's this beautiful flowing river. It's like clear blue. There's pretty big exposure, which means that if you were to fall, theoretically you'd fall quite far and land into this like white water river. So gorgeous photo, a little bit intimidating. But he said, wow, so cool. I actually do some rock climbing myself. I climb under a dentist's office in Brooklyn with some friends on Tuesday nights.
What?
That's what I said. It's like, what do you mean under a dentist's office? This is a vertical sport. How are you climbing under a dentist's office? And so he says, come on out. Like, come out Tuesday night. It's a bunch of guys just hanging out and climbing, and, it's pretty casual. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're just
I'm
hanging out.
imagining the worst right
gym?
now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So I said, okay. He sends me the info. Tuesday night, 8 p.m. I bring a friend. He goes, Here's the address. It's deep in the heart of Brooklyn. Here's the address. Touch the 2 wires together to ring the bell.
No!
What am I getting into? What is this? I have no context on what this is. So I go with my friend. We get there, and naturally the 2 wires outside the door, so we touch them.
What is the point of that? Is that just for fun, like part of the shtick?
Yeah, it's surely part of the shtick. I think this is meant to be a secret thing, so like, I hope I'm not exposing it all that much.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess it's to like not expose the experience of it. It turns out it's this dentist's office, and so obviously a dentist is not doing appointments at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. And so the dentist comes up and opens the door. He sees my friend and I and says, "You guys here to climb?" It's like, we're not
Wait,
here for a
the
dentist
dentist is also a rock climber?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Like, we're not here for a dentist appointment, you know? He says, okay, 3 rules. He said, no photos or videos, don't break your head, and have fun.
Oh, God.
Okay, yeah. I'm good with those rules.
What?
So he walks us through the dentist's office. Like, we're walking past, these little cubicles of where you would normally get your teeth cleaned or whatever, and to the back room, there's this door that opens up into the basement. So he opens it up. There's like a staircase that goes kind of down in one direction and then again 1 floor lower. So it's, I guess, half a floor each way. And even in this hallway, it's like cinder block hallway, there are climbs set up like against the walls. There's like handholds carved out or added on with some version of cement, and you climb up the wall using like a rope that's suspended on some like sketchy pole.
Okay.
So I
it's
saw
not
that.
a far distance, that climb.
It was probably 20 feet.
Okay.
It was essentially from the basement to the top of the first floor, I guess.
Okay.
So we walked down, and all around the basement was essentially like a boulder traversing area where it must have been for years. They'd been building this place up. They had put up, I think, plywall or some sort of something and put holds all over it, and it was all wrapped around the core of the building. So like the core of the building was in the middle, and they had built up for years all these walls that were just kind of like hand done by people who were passionate about this thing. So I was blown away. It was really a cool experience.
Is it like a massive space? Like how big is this basement?
How do I give context to it? It's not enormous, but they've done well with the space. It's probably, how do I standardize it in a way that most people would understand? I'll use Tim Hortons as an example. It's probably like the size of 2 Tim Hortons side by side. Most average Tim Hortons, yeah.
Right. So not huge.
Not huge. But there's kind of.
And are the ceilings very high? Like, what is there to climb exactly?
So it's more of like a horizontal climbing.
Okay.
So that's what I had wondered before I went also. It's essentially bouldering, which is a lot more of a horizontal experience. And they've done well with the space. It's essentially like normal height ceilings, maybe a little bit taller. But so the problems are a little bit more technical and less just like get on top of whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of as he described. He said, people hanging out, drinking, maybe smoking, whatever, climbing. Like before I went, I didn't know what to expect. One of the rooms in the back was almost like the chill room where people were chilling, smoking. It was like what you'd see in a New York old-timey movie of people gambling in a basement. It was like a bunch of junk in one corner of the room, yellow fluorescent lighting. I don't know why it was yellow, but that's what it was. And then just like a bunch of people hanging around like a table with an ashtray in the middle.
And what kinds of people were there?
All kinds of characters. This place is like a secret thing, sort of.
Okay.
So
it's like a club?
It was the kind of thing that like they actually call him the dentist. You have to know him to be invited. He's been climbing for much of his life. And his reviews actually as a dentist are really funny. They're like not the most amazing reviews. It seems like he just does this thing to make enough money to fund the hobby. And so I guess like he wants to create community around this, and apparently some world-class climbers have been through this place because it's just like such a unique and novel experience. And it's actually not so far from a place called the Gunks, which is like a big outdoor climbing area for most people who live in New York.
Okay.
Anyway, so was just like hanging out, enjoying myself, and there I had actually met a couple other people. One of the guys, his name is Isaac, he used to play trumpet, maybe it was, or produce some sort of music for a band I used to listen to. So I thought it was so cool. He was
That
like,
is cool.
"Oh, I produce with my twin brother. This is the name of our group. I'm no longer with them. I now play trumpet for a bigger band that also I listen to, and he's in the music scene." I love listening to music. For a while, I would like message people on Instagram being like, "Oh, I love your music." If they're a small band, sometimes they would respond. And so it was really cool having that kind of person-to-person connection with these musicians who usually people are idolizing.
Yeah.
And so I got to meet this guy, cool character. It turns out that he does rock climbing with the lead singer of the band that I was seeing a few weeks later. And so...
What is it about musicians and rock climbing?
I was looking for the answers of some sort, and climbing helps them be okay with not having it. I don't know.
Whoa.
At the time, I was living in Vancouver, in Canada, and he said, "Oh, I was climbing with this person this morning," and I said, "Well, that's so cool. I'm seeing their concert in 2 weeks." So he introduced me then to this lead singer and said, "Hey, this is a friend of mine. He'll take you climbing when they're out there." Mm. And it kind of wraps back to the original.
You'll take the singer climbing.
I'll take the singer climbing. Yeah. It kind of wrapped back to the original photo that I had shown this first guy who invited me to the dentist to begin with, of like this cool place. So I thought, how cool would it be to take this singer to this really awesome place? It turned out that they were a little bit busy to go climbing. Like climbing, I mean, even just having time in general when you're on a touring schedule is really tight, because the days are like, you get somewhere, you set up, sound check, you're like in the venue all day, you do the show, go to a hotel, and the next day you're like driving and then maybe doing the same thing.
And a climb is like a whole day activity?
It takes a little bit to get to where you're going, and then it takes maybe a little bit to hike to the base of where you're climbing, and then it takes a bit of time to actually climb and then perhaps hike down afterwards. So it's not just like a walk in the park. It's a little bit involved.
It's a climb on a cliff face.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it didn't actually end up working that I was able to take her climbing, but I was, after the show, able to hang out with some of the band members. Nothing in particular came of it, but I love this story because I think it's so cool how this one random connection led to this other random connection, and all of these things kind of happened in total random order and total happenstance, but they all led to like such strange and unique experiences.
Yeah, it is really cool. And that's kind of, for me, those experiences, I mean, minus the rock climbing and the saxophoning, but like in general.
I didn't actually say that.
What music?
My improv comedy.
What?
The trumpet player, you're saying?
Yeah, the trumpet. Sorry, I was.
Yeah.
So like change the details of the context, but those instances is like what life is all about for me. Those kind of things that just couldn't have happened any other way had you not done this. Yeah.
The more I shared this story with people, the more I realized that New York is just kind of this crazy place that has actually all kinds of stuff like this. Mm. I think maybe it's a dentist thing, but actually I told this story to a friend of mine who is in San Francisco, and she said that she knows of a dentist in New York whose office at night turns into some like BDSM sex club, which seems totally like the wrong place.
Unsanitary.
Like, things are in people's mouths during the day.
Okay. Anyway, I have a funny story about that. I actually wrote about this. So I work at a cafe around the corner from here, and one time a friend of mine was also working there, and he called me over and he's like, "Adina, you'll never guess what just happened, like the interaction I just saw." I was like, "Tell me." And he points to the girl next to him, and he says, "Someone just approached this girl and basically asked her out." I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Yeah, he came up to her and he said, 'I wrote about you in my gratitude journal. Do you want to go out with me?'"
A weird order.
And the girl said, "No, like I have a boyfriend, sorry." And I was like, "Oh, I can't believe I missed that. Like, It would have been so much fun to watch." So I turned to the girl and I say, "Excuse me, do you mind just like telling me about the interaction you just had?" And she's like, "Yeah, like he asked me out, but I said no." I was like, do you have a boyfriend?" And she's like, "No, but I just thought it was weird." I was like, why do you think it was weird? She was like, "I don't know, it was just like a little bit creepy. Like, I'm just sitting at the cafe reading, like, why is he coming up to me?" And in my head, I was like, well, actually, I said this out loud. I was like, well, but don't you think it was actually really brave of him? Like, probably 1 out of 100 people, 1 out of 1,000 people might take that chance. Like, most of us are primed to just, think a girl's pretty, not say anything, and just live your life anyway.
Right.
And he like made the extra effort. So then I was trying to convince her that she should have said yes. And she's like, I need to be more open-minded and more like open to experiences. And I was like, great, we're having a barbecue tonight. Why don't you come?
Turns out you were friends with the guy all along.
Yeah, it was a ploy. And so she said, yeah, like, what else could she say? She just committed to being more open. My friend took her Instagram. Now, I knew she would not come to the barbecue, and she didn't. But it was just such an interesting thing. I think a lot of people, the way I see it, and I think you're like this too, is like you're very open to what life has to offer. And that's like the whole fun. I think those are the kinds of experiences that people want in life, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there to some degree, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in life that you don't even know exists until you kind of learn that someone does it or someone is passionate about it. And I think when you lean into connections like that, or you find people that do these interesting things or whatever, you then get exposed to all kinds of other things. And this is true of outdoorsy things. This is true also of most things in life. Like, I don't know, for people that want to get into a certain career path, hanging out with people that are placing strong attention to studying and results and whatever maybe is the right group to be with. It's like making sure that you're surrounded a little bit with people that have similar virtues or values.
Yeah.
I mean, career paths I think are maybe a little bit easier to see quantitatively of like what the options are, but some things you never even know exist.
Yeah. But I guess my question to you would be, so you met this larger than life guy through a friend, which happens. We all meet people through friends. But you took it to the next level. You took him up on his potentially not real offer to have you over for a Friday night dinner.
Yeah.
And I think that's really scary to a lot of people. Like walking into a new social space by yourself, like, how do you do that with ease, if it is easy for you?
Yeah. So two things. One is that I had ended up hanging out with him kind of 2 or 3 times before I had left Israel. So it wasn't just like a stranger that I met for 15 minutes. Like, we got to know each other a little bit. And even there I saw how larger than life he was and how hospitable genuinely he was. Like the first night that I met him, my friend had left and a couple of his friends had joined, and he said, we're all going to this club. This person knows the DJ, so we're getting in for free. We went. He was like, can I buy you a drink? Whatever. Just like trying to be hospitable and make me comfortable.
Maybe he liked you.
It's possible. I don't know for either of us. And so he wasn't like as much of a stranger as was maybe seen in the story. The second thing is that I did actually go with a friend that I was staying with, because for me, I love a Friday night dinner, and for me, a lot of it is about community. And so, being able to like include the person I was staying with was like a really nice offer for me then to extend it in the same way that he had originally extended it to me. And I guess the last thing is like, what's there to lose? It's maybe easy to say that as a guy. I think as some women might be a little bit more afraid of that. But genuinely, what's there to lose? If I go and have a bad time, okay, great. I can leave if I'm having a bad time, and I know that I have other friends nearby that I can meet up with, or I can just go home and have equally as tame of a time. But if I go and have a good time, then like what it can lead to. It can lead to all kinds of other connections and meeting all kinds of funny characters after.
Yeah, I think exactly the same. For me, it's asking myself, what's the worst that could happen? And usually the worst case scenario is still tolerable, right? Like you have a bad time. No one talks to you. People laugh at you. Like, I think you come out the other side okay, right?
Yeah. Like, okay, great. Your ego might be hit a little bit, but sometimes that's good. Sometimes that builds character. I moved around a couple times as a kid, and I used to be really shy. And now when I tell people that, they actually have a hard time believing that. Mm-hmm. But I think actually those moves were what forced me out of my comfort zone to realize that, like, I'm not everyone's cup of tea and I'm not everyone's flavor, but at least I'm like being honest and genuine to myself. And so it's the same thing at these things. Like, okay, I'm not for everyone, but if I can like go and talk to a stranger and we get on, then it's a great time.
Mm-hmm. So what do you want to say to the people? Like, is it about being more open to these experiences? Is it never knowing what's around the corner? Why'd you tell me this story?
What's the big message of it all? I don't know. I actually don't think it's like for me to tell anyone how to live life. I think that there's a lot of growth in discomfort and growth in like taking certain risks. But I said that as someone who takes risks only in certain ways.
What do you mean?
Like, I take maybe social risks in this way. Like, this is a social risk, but perhaps like financially, maybe I'm conservative. Or from a career perspective, perhaps I've followed a path that makes sense. And so I take risks only in certain ways, recognizing that like there aren't necessarily these universal truths for me to like say, hey, you should get out of your comfort zone. Everyone's in a different circumstance. I do think that had I not moved around a handful of times as a kid, I probably wouldn't be so comfortable trying to like go move around a bunch or travel around or go talk to strangers or whatever. And so it's not really for me to tell someone. I think that for me, there is growth in the discomfort, but I think it's for everyone to figure out their own journey. There are some people who are maybe not so honest with themselves and saying, yeah, this is what I have and I'm totally comfortable and I'm growing in the way that I want to be in this. And that's fine as long as they then kind of try and be honest with themselves. Or not, it's fine in general. But then there are some people that actually it is exactly what they want and they're living the lives that they want in a comfortable way, and that's totally cool too.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you framed that. Like, I think for me, in a way, like I used to say this as like, I envy the people in my life who followed a very linear path and are happy about it, because I couldn't see myself following such a path and I couldn't see myself being happy doing that. But I think the point is everyone has to just answer for themselves, basically. Like, you can say all you want, step out of your comfort zone, but people might be doing that in different ways all the time that we don't see.
Yeah, and everyone's got baggage, right? Like, it's like you said, we see what's presented, we see the relationships that we have with these people, but who knows on the back end what someone's dealing with?
Yeah.
So, it's not for me to tell someone, like, who knows, maybe they have some things they're working through or they want to be around family or whatever it is. And them being that way is not any better or worse than me being this way, perhaps. It's just like whatever works.
Well, out of all the people that I know, you would be the one that I would guess to end up in a dentist's office in Brooklyn, climbing walls in the middle of the night,
basement,
meeting musicians and all of that. Like, it doesn't even surprise me. What can I say?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
We'll let the listeners decide. Yeah. Adam, thanks for joining and telling me a story.
Thanks, my friend. Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Tell Me a Story. If you like what you heard, like, subscribe, follow. You know the drill.